Yes, welcome into Sports Bit. Betting Insight today, weekend preview edition, Paulie and Teddy. Big game breakdown, NFL Week 2. How about the Dolphins and the Patriots, the Buccaneers and the Cardinals, the Packers and the Vikings? Play of the day. Remember, we're 10-2 in football. We're going to play of the day coming up after we preview the 4 NFL games. We're also doing a big matchup between the Bengals and the Steelers. Market moves, we'll get to that in a second. And we'll get to the bad beats and bad bets in a few in Major League Baseball. The also-rans cleaned up again. But we start Thursday night football. Fitzpatrick looked like Joe Namath, Teddy, who expected a shootout, 37-31 Jets.
Yeah, I mean, the Jets did kind of the same thing that they did against Cincinnati, in which the defense gave up a handful of big passing plays. And that was a problem against the Bengals. That was a problem last night against the Bills. But offensively, against Buffalo, the Jets got it together. There were a lot of almosts and misconnections in the Cincy game that kind of got together against Buffalo's defense. Look at the numbers. Yeah, Fitzpatrick like a healthy Joe Namath, like a Joe Namath circa 1969, not the hobbled guy over the back half of his career. Look at the tweets from ESPN Stats and Info. You know, Fitzpatrick, 10 completions on passes thrown, 15 or more yards in the game. Tied third most by any quarterback in the last 10 seasons from Pro Football Focus. Fitzpatrick, 15 of 19 for 321 and a touchdown on passes thrown 10-plus yards downfield. So it wasn't a dink and dunk. The Jets were attacking downfield, and it was kind of like he was pointing to his receivers in a pickup game, Paulie, and saying, just run down the field. I'll throw you the ball.
Yes, and I don't know if we mentioned this on SportsBet, but I mentioned it a few times on my radio show. Rex Ryan, first coach to be fired, 18-1. Oh, man, that looks good.
Yeah. Oh, hey, Rex, did you miss that timeout? After, you remember they're doing that hokey pokey with E.J. Manuel at the line of scrimmage, doing the hard counts. The play right after the Jets had just jumped off sides to turn it from 3rd and 6 to 3rd and 1. And you knew nobody was going to jump again. I knew nobody was going to jump again. The Jets knew nobody was going to jump again. But there's Ryan blowing the timeout. Remember, if they had that timeout, they wouldn't have had to onside at the end of the game. They could have gotten the ball back with more than a minute to go and in position to do something. Instead, they got it back with 10 seconds left at their own 15-yard line, and nothing happened.
Yeah, hey, Revis got burned again. How about that? Another thing, Todd Bowles, what the hell are you doing? You kicked the extra point up 12 with 4 minutes? Third grade math alert! Third grade math!
Someday they'll call us. I swear, someday these coaches will call us when it comes to, do I kick the extra point or do I go for 2? But, I mean, that's inexcusable. So we make fun of Rex Ryan, we got to make fun of Todd Bowles. That's not understanding math if you kick the extra point up 12 with 4 minutes to go. It's just bad coaching.
It only took Nance and Sims 10 minutes to point that out, too, when the Bills were on the move, for God's sakes. College football, big win for Houston. They were down 16-12 with 11 minutes left. They score 4 touchdowns the rest of the way, 2 pick sixes, Teddy.
Yeah, and I'm such a fan of Greg Ward. And, this is your classic why I love Greg Ward type of game. All right, in the end zone, he throws a pick in the fourth quarter. All right, and then, since he takes the ball, marches down the field, and now all of a sudden they're up. Some guys wilt, and some guys step up. And before the 2 pick six, it was Greg Ward stepped up with a really nice touchdown drive in a hostile environment, converting on a 3rd and 14 with a beautiful pass. I mean, it was really nice. And then it was Cincy that wilt and Hayden Moore with back-to-back picks. And the final score not indicative of how close that game actually was. That was a gutsy win for Houston.
Something to follow the rest of the season. Greg Ward is clearly playing hurt. So we'll see if that shoulder can get healthy once they play some of these cupcakes coming up. Bad beats, bad bets, bad for the books. A moose in Boston. 5-2 Yankees, bottom of the 9th, 2 outs, but Tansis blows it, and the Red Sox cover the run line as Hanley hits a 3-run bomb.
Yeah, and it was, a really dramatic moment. If you watched it, it was a lot of fun to watch. Unless, of course, you had a ticket on the Yankees and or a ticket on the under, because when it goes from Yanks and under to Boston and over, yeah, that's a moose.
Yes, huge.
But
yes.
You feel for the Yanks have fought a good fight, and I don't know that they're dead yet, but a bullpen that has been extraordinarily effective despite trading 2 of their top 3 guys. Took a tough beat last night.
Teddy, a huge night for the also-rans again. Brewers, Twins, Rays, White Sox, D-backs, A's all win as dogs.
Yeah, and you know what that means? That means that the Cubs, Tigers, Orioles, Indians, Dodgers, and Royals all lost as favorites. Yeah, a rough day and night if you were betting chalk in MLB with the must-win teams.
Cubs couldn't get it done, but as a result of the Cardinals' loss in San Francisco, the Cubbies wrap it up, their first division title since 2008. They don't play for keeps, Teddy, until October 7th. That's their first playoff game. That's a long layoff.
It sure is. Oh, I mean, to be honest, the Cubs have been playing for the postseason since what, about June?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, Madden's been gearing them up, but we'll have to see if they can flip that switch when it comes to October baseball.
All right, you wanted to go rapid fire here and run down some movers and shakers. Let's start in college football. They love Lamar Jackson just like us. Louisville money, plus 3.5 down to plus 1.
Yeah, and we've seen Penn State money over the course of the last 24 hours on the over. That total's been bet up from 48 to 52. Nittany Lions with that new up-tempo offense. We saw 42 to 39 last week, but they only ran 66 plays in that game. And boy, when you're talking about Temple's never going to push the pace. The 3 meetings between these two teams the last 5 years, 27-10, 24-13, 14-10 equals under. A little bit surprised at how much over money's come on Penn State.
Kansas State, a 5-point move. They're off a bye. They think Snyder and his team will be ready to play in Kentucky with a 3-point move. They're playing god-awful New Mexico State.
Well, New Mexico State's coming off the win as 13-point dogs versus their arch rival, New Mexico. Do they give a shit? Do the Aggies give a shit? The betting markets say no, they do not. Of course, and they also remember the fact that Kentucky last year, they lost 5 straight in SEC play. They had Charlotte at home, and everyone was like, can they? And they just whipped them 58 to 10. So this might be an opponent that the Wildcats can get some of their frustrations out against. The betting market certainly thinks so.
This makes sense. I don't know what you're going to get out of Oklahoma State and how they're going to respond. They're at home against a good Pittsburgh team.
Yeah, I mean, the markets are saying there's a hangover for Okie State. If you grade out the personnel between those two teams and factor in the home field, this line looks a little bit cheap.
Yeah, how about Duke and how about the Georgia-Missouri total?
Well, I mean, Duke against Northwestern, plus 6 down to plus 3.5. I mean, this hasn't been a lay the points type of series, and Northwestern hasn't been a lay the points type of team at any point in the Pat Fitzgerald era. And for Georgia-Missouri, I mean, this total got skyrocketed. I mean, went up to 45 at the opener, and the bookmaker opened 45, and then everyone else opened kind of around 50. It still got bet up, boom, 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 as high as 56. Finally, seeing some buyback at 56. The market's definitely impressed with the 61 that Mizzou hung last week against Eastern Michigan, although Georgia's defense ain't Eastern Michigan's defense.
No, NFL, for the second straight week, money on the Lions, and they were betting the Ravens early in the week.
Yeah, but the Ravens money, and we gave out Baltimore as a play of the day earlier in the week, saying we got to lock in at 6.5 now. It went up to 7, and now it's back down to 6. There's been money going both ways in that Baltimore-Cleveland game. The market's liking Josh McCown, who lit up the Ravens twice last year. Remember, Cleveland scored 33 and 27 in those 2 games against Baltimore. That were 2 of their 3 highest scoring games of the year.
Denver at home, well rested. A Colts secondary that's banged up, that got lit up by Detroit. Denver money here.
Yeah, Denver up from 4.5 to 6, and now we're seeing 6.5 start to pop up. And for all of that stuff with Indy, and their secondary, as you mentioned, disaster, the OL's banged up, but they've been a great road dog throughout the Andrew Luck era.
All right, up next, big game breakdown. Can Garoppolo make it 2-0? And we'll get to the Bengals and the Steelers coming up next on SportsBit. Betting insight today on SBRPicks.com.
Go to SBROdds.com. Browse, compare, and shop live odds available at top online sportsbooks.
Back on SportsBit, time for big game breakdown. As always, live odds, sportsbookreview.com. The Dolphins and the Patriots. Pat, 6.5, 42 the total. Can Garoppolo make it 2 in a row? He was sensational last week in the road win Sunday night without Gronk and 2 starters on the offensive line, Teddy. But Gronk and Solder back at practice this week for New England.
Yeah, we're not likely to know if either one of those guys are going to play this week until Sunday. That being said, the markets are going to know before anyone. So all you got to do is pay attention to the betting markets, and you'll know if you just start Gronk in your fantasy lineup on Sunday. But you talk about what Garoppolo did in week 1 without Solder, without Cooper, and of course without Gronkowski, and without some guy named Brady. He had a 106.1 passer rating. Put that number in perspective. Okay, in 2015 for the season, Tom Brady, he had a 102.2. For the season, the Arizona defense allowed an 80.9. So Garoppolo had a better game than Brady's average. And he, was like 26 or 25 and change better than Arizona's defense. He was pretty darn good. Now, the question is he facing a tougher challenge this week than last? We liked a lot of things about Arizona's defense coming into the campaign, but boy, they didn't play that well in the opener. But we told you so about Miami's defense last week. That's why we used Dolphins as play of the day against Seattle. We expected defensive domination from Miami. We're going to see it again, Paul?
Yeah, you could. I mean, it was what Russell Wilson was running for his life the entire game. They didn't reach the red zone until the final drive. They had to convert 2 fourth downs in order to do so, and the D held up. But they were on the field. This is impressive. They were still on the field way too long because Tannehill and the Dolphins couldn't move the ball.
That was the insanity of it. I mean, the offense only had 11 first downs in that ballgame. So Seattle ended up with 25 extra snaps compared to Miami. So not only was their defense playing extraordinary, they were on the field way too long. They held up despite being on the field too long, but perhaps that's how the Dolphins were able, or the Seahawks were able to get that final touchdown in the fourth quarter to win the ballgame and convert those 2 fourth downs, because Miami's D was a little bit out of gas when it matters most, and that could happen again this week if they're already gassed to begin with.
Yep, Pouncey downgraded to doubtful. They sure missed him last week. And remember the last time they played in New England, it was a horror show. Tannehill stunk. The Dolphins' offense was a train wreck. I know you're high on Adam Gase, but so far, not a good job on the offense. We'll see if they can fix that in week 2. LiveOddsSportsBookReview.com, game number 2, Bengals and the Steelers. Steelers -3, minus $1.20, 48.5 the total. All 3 road teams won last year, and the Steelers won 18-16 in the playoffs. You remember that finish, the perfect hit, the Pac-Man Jones penalty. And Teddy, this is refreshing. These 2 teams can't stand each other.
No. Look at the pictures. All you got to do is look at some of the, this is NFL, like, dirty wars. Yeah. Steelers, of course, without some of their best offensive players. Remember, they lost at Denver in the playoffs last year. Le'Veon Bell was hurt. Antonio Brown was hurt in that ballgame. Why? Both injuries directly as a result of hits that they suffered by Bengals players. Ben Roethlisberger's shoulder, remember, his shoulder wasn't 100%. Why? Vontae Burfict destroyed him on a nasty sack. It's not like the Steelers were innocent bystanders, Giovanni Bernard and Tyler Eifert, both concussed with big hits from Steelers players last year. Dalton, remember? He got lost for the season with the thumb injury suffered against Pittsburgh in December. So it's not just bad blood. These teams have really hurt each other. They've really hurt each other's playoff chances.
Yes, Eifert told ESPN he's still a few weeks away from coming back. So last week without Eifert and Jones and Sanu, Dalton, and they moved the ball. But half his completions and half his yards went to A.J. Green, Teddy.
Yeah, I don't worry about that much. What I do worry about is the fact that the Jets had 7 sacks against Cincinnati's offense last week, their offensive line. And then they didn't sack Tyrod Taylor on Thursday night. And also, we saw Tyrod Taylor against the Jets hit a couple of big pass plays downfield, and that was essentially Cincinnati's offense against the Jets, was Dalton hitting a couple of big plays and burning Revis Island a little bit. So the fact that the Bills were able to do the same thing and protect their quarterback better, to me, is something of a problem. It's certainly something that it's a red flag for Cincy moving forward. But of course, I got to go back to that playoff loss. As you mentioned, all 3 matchups between these 2 teams last year were won by the road team. But let's not forget, even with that late collapse, Pittsburgh was -2.5 with the last-second field goal. They ended up winning by 2. I cashed a Bengals ticket on that day. So the point spread, always the great equalizer. Let's not forget where the number was last year at this time. Pittsburgh laying points in Cincy. Now it's almost the same point spread, but Pittsburgh's playing at home at Heinz Field.
Too much respect for the Bengals, in my opinion. I like the Steelers in this one. And the Steelers off a short week, the big win Monday night in D.C. Obviously, Roethlisberger, Williams, and Brown led the way. A scary offense. Brown was awesome. But what was with Haley giving Williams all those carries? This guy's old. Now he's got to bounce back on short rest.
Yeah, I mean, D'Antonio Williams a workhorse. I mean, he really is. All right, he's 33 years old. Already had 26 rushes and 6 pass catches last week, so he got tackled 32 times. The interesting thing, he had, 5 carries in the final drive. A drive where Pittsburgh took the ball up 15 with 4 minutes left. And sometimes you think you want to get your veteran out of the game in those type of situations, but other times, and Mike Tomlin, probably one of those guys, saying, I want to make sure my veteran's in the lineup here because we're not fumbling the football and giving them a chance to come back in this ballgame. That being said, there could be consequences this week. See how much energy and burst D'Angelo Williams has in his step when it comes to Cincy on Sunday.
Buccaneers and the Cardinals, plus the Packers and the Vikings. And a great quote from a GM on one of these teams and the play of the day coming from one of these games. Up next on SportsBit. Betting Insight today on SBRPicks.com.
Hey, SportsBit viewers, tune into today's MLB Odds Gobble Show Friday, September 16th. This is a weird card, Mike Brenner. Very interesting card. We're going to break it down. I'm only going to have a couple of picks. Yeah. I am liking them. It's a tricky card, Mike Brenner. We're going to break it all down, Scherzer and everything, right?
That's right, buddy, and there's some good opportunity. And check out the rest of our videos for college football.
We're back on SportsBit. Paulie and Teddy, Betting Insight today, live on sportsbookreview.com. We're back with Big Game Breakdown. The Buccaneers on the road to take on the Cardinals. Arizona 750 the total. Winston, huge last week in the win on the road against Atlanta. 4 touchdowns, and he wasn't sacked, Teddy. And team chemistry looks to be good. They like Dirk Cutter early on.
Yeah, they sure do. I mean, there's a lot to like about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers off that win in Atlanta, but the markets have kind of devalued Atlanta off of that win more than they said, hey, Tampa, you did something great. But famous Jameis last week, he was special. I mean, he really was. If you watch the game, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And it's not just the talent. These guys seem to like each other. They seem to like each other a lot. I like the chemistry in Tampa right now.
Yep, last week Palmer and Fitzgerald on the same page. 8 times they hooked up for 81 yards and 2 touchdowns. The rest of the team underachieved. Johnson ripped off a 45-yard run, but only 18 running plays, got 47 yards the rest of the way. And the defense never was able to rattle or take Garoppolo out of his comfort zone, which is definitely cause for concern.
Yeah, I mean, I had a lot of causes for concern with Arizona in the preseason. When you go back to last season, look at the end of the season last year for Arizona. And they were red hot early on. Over the back half of the campaign, they were not covering point spreads. They were an overvalued commodity on a consistent basis. They were a bad team to bet on. And you watched them in August, and Arizona, I mean, they didn't care. And they're saying, hey, we return every single snap that we had or every single yard and point that we had from last year on offense. We'll be fine. And then there they are in week 1, and they weren't fine. They were okay, but the offense was, hit and miss, start and stop. A couple of nice connections from Palmer and Fitzgerald, but it wasn't like they were marching up and down the field and putting the biscuit in the basket in the end zone. And so you say, does that happen this week? Is this the right team that's going to come? Or maybe Arizona is a team that we have to stop thinking about in this super elite category. Maybe they're only pretty good.
You're right. I don't like them. And we read that quote. Remember the GM, Steve Keim, he said during the preseason, we're not going to be able to just flip the switch when the season starts. He was concerned back in the preseason. So after they lost to the Patriots, he went on his weekly radio show and said we should be angry, disappointed, and embarrassed about the loss. Here's the quote. I know we have a talented bunch, yet at the same time, if they don't play to their level, we're gonna have to disappointment. The sky's falling Monday. That's the feeling we should all have. End quote. I mean, he blasted that team after what happened against New England.
He's an idiot. In multiple ways. Number one, they lost because the kicker didn't hit a field goal. Okay, it wasn't like Arizona lost. The kicker missed. The special teams blew the game. And yes, they get an L for that. But you can't rip the whole team when your kicker misses a unmakeable field goal at the end. You can't. Number two is that nobody likes him anyway. Okay, basically when he was talking in the preseason, every comment was, yeah, whatever, dude. Shut up, dude. Yeah, okay. You keep yapping. We're the ones who are actually playing. And the one thing you don't want to do after a week 1 loss to a very talented Patriots team is the sky is falling. No, it's a long season. Keim is not handling this situation right, but that's not the only buzz I'm hearing negatively in Arizona. You see what Ty Matthew had to say after his role was adjusted as a more traditional safety role last week?
Yeah, why does this bother you?
Well, I mean, here's a quote, from Tyrann Mathieu. I don't feel like I was in position to really make any impact plays. I feel like the Patriots, cut most of our playmakers out of the football game. They were really prepared for us. That bothers me in two ways. One, he's saying, hey, our coaching staff got outcoached. They were really prepared for us. That means they were better prepared than we were. And number two, this is a defense where everybody's supposed to be happy. All these guys are able to have versatile roles. Matthew's got to be the happiest guy on that. He's an impact as player as they have. When he's saying, I'm not in position to make plays, that's problematic. All of that being said, Paulie, I can't bet Tampa. This is handicapping 101 for September, okay? I'm not in love with Arizona, but Arizona, in theory, remains an elite team at home, coming off a loss, versus a fat and happy team back on the road off a road win. Your standard handicapping methodology, your wise guy 101 says you take the team that looked bad last week, the good team that looked bad last week, not the mediocre team that looked good. That's just basic handicapping, particularly early in the season where you're not 100% sure that what you saw week one is absolutely real. If we see it again this week, and I'm not playing this game, I'm not betting this game because I could only bet Tampa and I can't bet Tampa. But if we see it again this week, in my mind, it merits a significant power rating adjustment for both of these teams.
Good points there. Last game, liveoddsportsbookreview.com. Sunday night, the Vikings open U.S. Bank Stadium. Packers and the Vikings, Green Bay 2.5, 43.5 on the road. Sean Hill was the quarterback in week one. He couldn't produce an offensive touchdown, and he couldn't stretch the defense. They couldn't open up holes for Adrian Peterson, who will play Sunday night. According to reports, Bradford's taking most of the reps with the first-team offense. We taped this Friday morning. Zimmer's not saying anything.
No, nor does he have to. But again, the reports are saying that Bradford's likely to play. And if you watched Sean Hill last week, maybe you agree with that. But it's not all about Minnesota's offense. What did we see last week? The offense didn't get a touchdown. Adrian Peterson couldn't run the football. What happened? The defense covered the point spread by themselves. Remember what Denver's defense did last year? And how many point spreads they covered on the way to a Super Bowl title with the league's best defense? I mean, that defense had like 5 different game-changing, point spread-changing plays over the course of the season.
Very true.
Minnesota's, that defense, they could be the NFL's best this year. They scored 2 touchdowns last week and held the Titans under 3 yards a rush.
Yep, Rodgers happy to see his pal back, Nelson, a good red zone target, although he 6 catches, only went for 32 yards. And the Packers defense, this is important. They shut down the run against Jacksonville. They only allowed 1.8 yards per carry in 26 rushing attempts. No run longer than 7 yards. All right.
Yeah, I mean, there were positive things for Green Bay in that game. Having Nelson back in the field, a positive. The fact that Nelson was dinking and dunking, not a positive. The defense stuffed the run, positive. They played well in the red zone, positive. They also got torched by the pass, negative. We saw Rodgers make a handful of, just incredible plays. Let's call them what they were. Where, fingertip catches and all of that. But to say that the Packers offense was in midseason form, was in full sync, I don't think so. Not yet.
Yep. All right. Earlier in the week, we gave out the Ravens -6.5. College, we gave out Oregon +3. 10-2 so far in football. Money time. Back to this game. What are we doing, Teddy?
Well, there's a couple things worth talking about here. We have to talk about this stadium. Okay? I don't know that there's going to be a stadium that's going to be worth more in the NFL this year than U.S. Bank Stadium is going to be worth on Sunday night. In the preseason, the crowds were setting decibel records. It's going to be louder than the Metrodome. The crowd and the crowd noise is meaningful in this particular game in a way that I don't know is reflected in the point spread. But more than anything else, this comes down to value. Look, the Packers were -3.5 or -4 at the close against Jacksonville last week. Now they're -2.5 at Minnesota. That's a baffling market adjustment to me. I've got the Vikings power rated at least 5 points higher than the Jags, especially considering the Packers were life and death to win that game last week. So I don't think we're going to see +3s here. I'm happy with the +2.5 in a betting market environment where having 1s and 2s all of a sudden are meaning a whole lot more of late. Let's take Minnesota. Game number, what's that game number? I lost it already. Game number
288.
288.
288.
The Vikings plus 2.5. That's our play of the
All
day.
right, great analysis. Let's try to make it another perfect week in football. Good job, good week of shows, and thanks for the uptick in views. Tell your family, tell your friends, tell everybody. We will have a good weekend. We're back Monday to recap everything on SportsBit. Betting Insight today on SBRPicks.com.